All right, what is up, guys? We're back again with another Maldcast episode. Today, we're going to be talking about physical and mental health in esports. I am one of your hosts, Pavan Currymaker, alongside Alchemisto in the top left, and to the bottom left we have Zaf at the very bottom, and then right below me is Awesome, right below me, and then right around there is Pirate Juan. And today we got all five people. We got five hosts for you. So hopefully this will be a banger of an episode. And I guess we should get started with a small intro on
It's a
Zaf because
miracle.
he's our special guest today. Zaf is the coach for ITEA Overwatch team. He has been in Open Division before, so Tier 3 Overwatch. He's competed at that level ages ago. He's a dinosaur when it comes to Overwatch. However, he's pretty young, um, and he's been working with us since January, and it's been a pleasure to have him work with us. And so we decided, what better way to talk about mental and physical health in esports than someone who has experience in esports, and also your education was based in mental health, correct, Zaf?
Yeah. I have a psych degree.
There we
Uh,
go. So we
and
can
I
say,
also,
can we quote you on like an expert opinion, quote unquote?
yeah.
Okay,
Oh, I
does
mean,
it-
I'm maybe not expert, but you can definitely quote me on some aspect of it. You sure?
Is this just a group therapy session?
I don't, I don't, I don't,
you would
Is
be
it?
surprised the amount of
I
people
I
that
don't,
ask me that.
I don't
Is this
know.
a group therapy session?
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I honestly don't know. I don't know anymore. I don't know what most things are anymore. So yeah, if this
Seems
was
like a good time to have it.
seems like a group therapy session, I guess. So yeah, physical and mental health in esports. There's been a bunch of stigma around our people, gamers. Being like, hey, you
Not
guys have bad
race.
posture. You guys are like gaming is just generally bad for your health because you're sitting in front of a computer multiple hours a day. If you look at streamers like Asmongold, who streams for like multiple hours a day, daily streamers, marathon streamers, especially speedrunners, stuff like that, they're like in their chair for multiple hours at a time. Um, Even like professional esports players, like they're in their chair for like what 4 or 5 hours at a time, maybe even more. Um, Obviously with breaks here and there, because let's be honest, there is going to be a lot of importance to physical health in esports because you are considered an athlete. And Juan just fucking ducks out, you fucking bitch.
I had to turn off the TV. Bro, the TV was annoying me. I'm
Nah,
sorry.
I bet big bets. All right, so Ryan, do you want to kick us off with like what the local naysayers would say?
They refer to gaming as the devil's pastime. They don't
Yeah.
think
So
there's
so
anything
what
that
does that
can do
even mean? What does that
What
even
does it
mean,
mean?
Ryan? Yeah.
They think it
The
just
devil's
corrupts.
pastime. Is it just like a
They
waste of
think
time? Is that what they're saying?
they think it
Absolutely.
corrupts the youth.
It corrupts
corrupts
the
It,
youth.
it corrupts the youth. The-
It makes them not go outside.
It makes
Well, common
it,
one
ma- it
nowadays
makes
is
them
the
violent.
violent video game.
Yeah, exactly. Like Grand Theft Auto. Like it. I remember San Andreas would used to be like all over the news. That people was like, why are people going out and running people over and committing crimes and such? It's not the movies. It's the video games.
Yeah. I can speak about this because I actually did I did like a public speech about why video games are good, and also talked about like the violent side of video games. So there were a bunch of articles, mainly like because this was when I think I was in like elementary school. Um, this was back when like Gears of War was still pretty big, Halo was still pretty big, Call of Duty was huge. Um, and like there were obviously MMOs, so massive multiplayer online games that were pretty big, like MMORPGs as well. And so there was an article that I saw, where a group of people took gaming so literally that they started to kind of um, apply it to real life, in the sense of not like, oh, I can apply my soft skills in real life. They were like, if we die, we can respawn, guys. It's fine. We can go into God mode. Trust me. And so I believe there was an article that stated that a group of people, a group of like young people, and by young I don't mean like children, right? I mean like young adults or
Age.
teenagers.
Yeah.
That were like in a group, and one of them decided to actually take his life, which is really like unfortunate, and it was just really shocking to me. Mind you, I was like 11, 12 years old reading this, so I was like mentally I was just like, what the fuck does this mean, like, at all? And so I asked my mom, and my mom's just like, you probably shouldn't talk about that, but it's good research, but you shouldn't talk about that, and you shouldn't search that word up for a little bit. I'll talk with you about it like when you're a little older to understand stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, but still, it's just like things like that actually happen, where like people take gaming so literally, and they try to apply it, like stuff in like mechanics in video games. They apply it, like, as much as we meme about like, oh my god, your intelligence is a plus 10, or like fear 100. You know how there's the was it the
The memes.
Skyrim memes, where like uh you like take money out of your parents' purse, and then like you sneak your router, you sneak
Stealth 100.
outside. Yeah, it's like sneak 100 and stuff like that. So I think that that's like those memes, but then these guys took it to like an extreme, right? There's obviously that extreme, but there's also the other extreme where like people become completely antisocial. They don't go outside whatsoever, and given like the current pandemic, it's pretty common for a lot of people to not go outside. Like a fair number of people, like, just the most amount that they go outside is to like maybe go outside to take a breath of fresh air, and some people rarely do it. Like, I rarely took a breath of fresh air. I had like my blinds closed throughout like most of quarantine, and like I'd just be in my room, and like the only times that I would actually get sunlight is when I was like, I just felt like ass, and I was just like, I just open up the blinds because I get like decent sunlight into my room, and I'd just be like, ah, yes. I lay in my bed and there's sun shining on me. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic, you know. Um, but yeah, so there's like the multiple extremes where like I guess it's proving those local naysayers that it is a devil's pastime. Um, However, there's also the other perspective, which is the perspective that we have as gamers, right? Um, where we're like, well, it's fun, but it also isn't like that.
Yeah.
It's not like a devil's pastime. Like, I don't know your experiences with gaming. If you guys want to briefly go over it,
I feel
real quick.
I feel like it's just like a difference, or not a generational gap, but just a knowledge gap between like how older people see games versus how younger people see games. Because back when everyone lived in the same neighborhood, instead of just playing games together, they'd just go play outside and play soccer, play whatever, like mess around, go run around, play tag, go to the park, right? But now it's just like, oh yeah, people don't live together or near each other, right? They'll just play games together, and that's also a form of like social bonding that, yeah, at the same that older generations might not understand as much until they experience it, as well as the games just being entertaining to play, right? Just putting you in a different fantastical scenario that you really can't do in real life. Or even if you play games that like just simulate real life, like if you play FIFA or like something like that, like it just makes you and promotes things that you like to enjoy. And I don't, and that's what they don't really see. They just see it as like a waste of time instead of like something they can relate to. Because like my best way to describe this or problem is more of like when they're like, oh, why are you watching someone play a video game when you could be playing it? And then they go and watch 4 or 5 games of soccer on a weekend, and you're just like, huh, why don't you play? Why don't you go play soccer? You know, like instead of watching it. So sort of that like misconception of, oh yeah,
I
I don't want
remember when
to.
that misconception became like a big deal. Like, you guys know who Jimmy Kimmel is?
Yes,
Yeah,
How he
yes,
like
yes.
brought that fucking
He
I mean,
brought that
that
up in an
show where
interview with Ninja, right? I
he
believe it
brought
was.
up like before with like Markiplier and someone else where he got them on the
Yes,
show because
yes,
people
yes,
got
right.
offended by a skit that he did. Whereas like it has people just like sitting at a TV and they're watching like a bunch of dudes playing video games, and someone's like, "Well, why aren't you just playing the games yourselves?" And they couldn't explain it. Then it cuts to like some guy at, like acting as guys like, "I created a race of idiots. They're all just watching video games instead of playing it. What is this?" And everyone was like very mad. and then they got like Markiplier and other like gaming content creators to try to explain to him like
Hmm.
why do people do this? It's because it's just
Yeah.
another form of entertainment. And
Yes.
then he
Yes.
picked in the comment section
Hmm.
to like prove his point.
Yeah. The one that I remember is Jimmy Kimmel's interview with Ninja, I think, or like some he Ninja went on like when he started to blow up and he made his book and whatnot and he went for a thing and Awesome is shocked. He's shocked by this revelation that Ninja actually has been on live TV.
No, I think maybe my PC might be working now. So just maybe. Don't have my hopes up
Maybe.
right now.
Let's just finish the recording
there-
first
something different
before
happened, yeah.
this is a whole new level of scuffed. But yeah, so as I was saying, like with Ninja, that's like one of the things that he was talking about in like one of these big mainstream talk shows. He cannot believe it. Enrique.
It's all over again for him.
Exactly.
I
So
also go for it.
there like that's one of the things I remember. But there's also been like in media there's been obviously what is it, San Francisco Shocks, whenever they won the Overwatch League championship for the last 2 years, they've got like Super's been on Jimmy Fallon's
Sinatra's
show.
went on him.
Sinatra has been on him, but yeah.
Oh, we're not gonna bring up
That's
Sinatra, but I mean he went on there
Yeah,
with
he
Super, and then
he
Super's
did.
been on there again
Yes.
last year.
And I
And then
also
I
think
believe
part of
Conan O'Brien usually does like gaming
Yeah.
segments with. He did one with Markiplier. He did one with like football players because like so mainstream athletes, so like football. I think football
the
is the
big
biggest one.
just traditional sports.
Yeah, traditional sports, and he's done that. But kind of to move along the conversation, I do want to talk about like the pros and cons of gaming, right? There's obviously pros and cons in terms of mental and physical. So we'll start with like the benefits that it gets, like, and benefits that we've experienced. Like, so for me personally, I've experienced like it's like cathartic to kind of play certain video games. Like I play Osu as a way to like relax and turn off my brain, without having to like actively think about anything. And like I'm listening to music at the same time, but I'm also like using my hands to click the circles, as I like to call them. And so it's like that aspect for me is fun and it's like cathartic and I can turn my brain off. I know that each of you have like your own like secret getaway game where like you can just play it on your own, like without any kind of social interaction, just to like relax for the day and stuff like that. So like if you guys want to talk about that, that'd be great.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna add a point,
Mm-hmm.
like for the previous thing we were talking about, is like most of the times what happens is if you play a traditional sport or you're in a traditional hobby, right? People can see your progress even if they don't understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't really happen at esports because fundamentally the game looks the same, right? You're just decisions and in-game stuff change, or like your reaction time changes or your game sense changes, but people outside of the game don't understand that. Like my parents actually, like, before I explained what League of Legends was, they thought I was just playing the same game over and over and over again.
No, my parents
Like,
thought the same thing. They'd like come into my room every time I'd be like playing League and
and
like
they'd be like,
on my
"Oh,"
own.
and then they're like,
Why are you just
"Yeah,
killing the same thing over and over again? What
yeah,
enjoyment
yeah."
is coming out of it?
That's a
They're
great
like,
question.
"Why?"
Mom. I have no idea. I should
Yeah.
how it is, I guess.
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah, I
they're like,
also hate my life.
I
I mean,
also
honestly, you can ask the same question when you look at like a football game. It's like, why do they keep on
yeah,
doing the thing
exactly,
over the same thing over and over again?
yeah, or
exactly.
basketball.
Exactly, but like if you end up watching more basketball or watching more soccer, you know that each team does something different.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
players do something tiny, or like physically they might be different, or they might be taller, or the coach does something else, right? So you just got to put it in their perspective of like why it's sort of the same thing, but just a different medium of enjoyment. So that's sort of like my end point. But what else? What?
What benefits did you
Yeah,
gain, dude? From
what
gaming?
what benefits did I get? I mean,
Well, I guess benefits is kind of
oh, I
like the
don't
weird
know.
word, but like how did
think-
you feel about gaming in general?
I was always a very hyperactive kid that had a lot of energy. So like even after having basketball practice, I'd still show up and play for like 6 hours after school. So it was just a energy waster. Because I didn't like doing like I want to say I didn't like doing outside activities, but like I'm allergic to horses and all like outside stuff. So I
Mhm.
just like my parents were like, "Oh, you gotta learn how to do this." I was like, "Nope, nope, you're good. I'm allergic. I got you. I gotta do this."
I'm allergic to manual labor.
Basically,
One of
yeah.
my favorite quotes from Jeremy Clarkson on Top Gear is like, "What you know? I'm allergic to this and that," and like Richard Hammond's like, "I have a phobia of insects," and um, James May is like, "I have a phobia of heights." It's like they asked Jeremy, well, what are you generally afraid of?" And he goes, "Manual labor." You know, the usual.
I can
um,
relate to that. Manual labor
right?
sucks.
It
Yeah,
does.
it's bad. It's not fun.
All right.
I
Instead of
mean,
sitting in
that's
this awkward silence, what else you got, Juan? What else you got
I'd
for
say
me?
like I'd say like the benefits are more of like so always being connected with your friends, even though like oh yeah you weren't at school, but like you'd play a team deathmatch and just talk or play the game, and then that's it. And then you see each other at school, and then you talk about it, and then
Yeah,
keeps
that's true.
building on each
Yeah,
other, or someone will get a new game. They're like, oh, let's go all play the game, and then boom, you have a social event right there. Like, you know, that was always fun because like, oh, someone you like always be with your friends and be like, oh, let's go play the new Assassin's Creed, and then everyone would take turns, and then someone would do something like super average, but no one had ever done it. And you're like, oh my gosh, you're so good.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
It provides people with a vehicle to like get together, like and
Yeah.
communicate among one another and talk about things. Like kind of like how like you go to a movie and like your friends see a movie all the time, and then you like meet together and you talk about the movie. And it's the same thing with video games as
Hmm.
well. I remember like sometimes back in high school, like around the time when Fallout 4 came out, that my friends and I every time like when we get into the
I
class
was
together,
in
we were talking about
college,
like
dude.
like we
That's
were
so
talking
long
about like
ago.
what we did in our separate campaigns and the choices we make and how we were building our characters and whatnot.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think for me the like video games in terms of the social aspect, because I lived like further away from my friends. So like all of us used to live in like literally different parts of Singapore, and like it would be like at least like a 30 to an hour commute. Paying
Yeah.
my public transport was just like a pain in the ass, right? And like we all were like, our parents would be like, "Oh, you need to be home at this time," because we were pretty young. Um, Obviously, as we went through high school, it was less like strict, but we still had like curfews of like, oh, you need to get here by before the last bus leaves, or something like that, or you have to be on the last bus. Um, so like being able to like just go online and be like, yo, you wanna play League, or you wanna play this game or that game online, was definitely a big factor in like being able to strengthen friendships.
I mean, for
Yep.
me personally, just with I don't know physical, mental benefits from playing video games is, I like to live vicariously through characters or more role playing kind of aspects.
Mm,
Kind of gets you. It's a nice escape from the shit that happens IRL, either in high school, college, you know, breakups, whatever that's going on. Um, so I mean, I just remember like I don't know having video games as a way of like meeting new people. Right. I remember I'll never forget the first time like I interacted with Fallout 3. It's like that's the game that got me into gaming. Um,
mm-hmm.
I remember going to a friend's house. I don't know, it was like fifth, sixth grade, something in that ballpark. And he showed me like the intro sequence to Fallout 3, and I was just like blown away. Like I can just vividly recall just sitting in there. It was like he was on his PlayStation 3. We're just playing Fallout 3. It was just I hadn't seen any of the game. I just saw like the intro sequence of trying to get out on the vault and stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. It's just been pretty uphill for that. It's a nice way of clearing your head. You know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Also,
Absolutely.
I definitely understand that. What about you, Awesome? You were about to say something.
dep- I was gonna say, depending on the type of person that you are, I think video games also have like this effect of making you a lot more I would I guess analytical is the word, but I feel like in some ways there are some sort of like critical thinking like skills that do get applied more, and you can say that with sports and stuff too. But I think sometimes with sports, like people focus a lot on like the physical aspect of it, where they don't notice as much of like or focus on a lot of the analytical parts. Where with gaming, if you're not really as mechanically skilled, if you are able to develop good game sense, I think that also just helps you like look things in like different perspectives anyway, like outside of just gaming.
Try and compare Portal with football. Like, do it. I dare you. You know, it's like
Right.
you're not gonna get the same kind of, you know, knowledge benefit that you're gonna gain from playing Portal than you are gonna
Oh,
get in football.
Juan, what are you gonna say? You're gonna compare it, aren't you?
Yes.
Say it. Say it. Say
I
it
mean,
now. Just say
I mean,
it.
obviously, I think the spatial awareness thing is, I wouldn't say not the same, but the spatial awareness QBs and wide receivers or running backs have to see space before it happens, right? Sort of is like the parallel to Portal, right? Obviously, probably not as in depth of thinking, oh, you're gonna be in the air and you gotta throw a portal and then catch the cube and jump, right? But it's there, it's just in a different way, and that's why I do think that video games are really good for certain things, and sometimes traditional sports might be better for other things. But I do think there is a healthy medium that promotes both, right? Like,
It still exercises it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like you still
Well,
think.
I think even so like Portal would be a good example of like general critical thinking
Yeah,
skills,
yeah, I agree.
and versus like like in football, obviously the critical thinking skills you need us to play QB is going to be way different than a
Yes,
running back or versus
exactly.
a wide receiver, right?
Or
And then
even
that
O
kind of gets
line.
in. Oh, I mean, all of the
Yeah.
different positions have different skill sets with different critical thinking. Like you need to see different things and be able to react to those things like on the dime, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's kind of like that in Overwatch, right? I mean, a lot
Yeah,
of us play
I
Overwatch
agree.
sports where different roles, different, off tank, main tank, we all have different ways of looking at the game from our own position. And then we think about how the game is or how it should be played from our own position, our own experiences, right? Um, and that's kind of why I got into coaching just in general, is because as a player, you only see things from like your point of view, right? Like I'm an Ana one trick, right? Which is just a support for people who don't play Overwatch. Um, and I've only ever I've known good matchups for Ana, right? I don't play a lot of other characters. I'm like, you don't ask me how to play Reinhardt. I have no idea. It's not for me, right?
Yeah.
But like as I stepped out of the player position, started thinking about the coaching, I've learned a lot about all the different characters and how they interact on maps and all of that. And that's kind of I think I don't know, like a good coach kind of perspective for like like a quarterback coach or just assistant coach kind of in football or
Yeah,
any other
yeah.
sport. I mean, I know the most about football. I'm not gonna know anything about soccer or NBA shit. So
No, but that's fine. That's fine. I feel like it's a good parallel because I mean, football is a very very much you gotta think. You gotta like outthink the other coach, right? In a way where
yeah,
like,
But
oh,
you
you're
also
gonna
gotta
run,
think on the
you're on a
fly.
QB
It's like
sneak.
it's
Yeah,
not just critical thinking; it's quick thinking. So it's like quick-witted
yeah,
actions and thinking. So like it plays into
yeah, like a play
your
action or
reflexes
something.
as well as like your quick decision making. So like, let's say your blitz isn't working, you have to either switch up another player or go for a fumble. If you're like 1st and 10 or like fourth and 5 or something like that. Um, just before before a turnover, sometimes like coaches would be like, "Yo, just eat the ball." Like here, eat the ball, so we can see what they would run if we tried that.
actually, it's funny that you mentioned that because my favorite college football team, because I follow that, I follow the NFL,
Hmm.
is Auburn. And
Yeah,
back in 2013, I mean, our whole offense involved going very fast,
yeah,
playing a lot of plays very quickly. Um, and I also coach like that in Overwatch because I was watching either a podcast or listening to a streamer talk about this. Um, and they were saying that the whole point of going fast, taking the initiative in Overwatch, is that you're making the opponent make uh, reactions very fast and making sure that their decisions are correct. Otherwise, you're just going to win the team fight. And that's just the same thing on as a coaching perspective for football. If you plan to go very fast, right, you're just no huddle, blazing. It's very same parallel as it is in
Mhm.
Overwatch, or even
I
like you look
agree
at
with
the
that.
NYXL, you can have more defensive teams that are just really good on defense. Maybe like the Seattle Seahawks or like Alabama. They're very good on
Yeah,
defense, and they kind of get well rounded around the years. As they've been getting better, of course. But yeah, so like a lot of parallels. You can make just about anything in either Overwatch, Dota, CS:GO, Valorant. I don't know, any sport.
Yeah, I think
I
there's a
agree with
lot
that.
of parallels to draw, but I kind of want to move away from just the kind of the physical aspect, I guess. I want to move towards like the more mental aspect and like the mental benefits of
Sign
gaming.
me up.
Exactly. So Zaf, since you are going to be our resident expert, or as
I
expert
don't
as we
go
can
for that
get,
far.
as
Yeah,
expert as we can get,
knowledgeable.
yeah, using your vast knowledge base in psychology, using your putting your degree to work here. What do you think are some of the things either you have experienced or have seen like your players experience because you've coached a bunch of teams and also played with a bunch of other players on like the mental health effects of gaming?
Well, I've been like you said, I've been on a lot of teams. I have seen people implode. I have seen people use the Overwatch competitive scene as a way of getting out of, like a shitty home life or doing bad in school, and that's just their escape. I've seen, like, me personally, where I just play Overwatch because it's fun. I want to, play with the community, and so like that's what I get out of it. I don't really get a whole upset about anything that's going on. Um, you get the whole fucking spectrum with people taking it negatively or positively, and it's really just how you frame it and why you're playing Overwatch or CS:GO or whatever game that you're choosing to play. Like, if you're going at it because you want to become a better player, and then that's going to be completely different than, oh, I'm playing this because I have nothing better to do with my time. I don't have any friends IRL, or I don't know, my shitty home life, or you're in college and it's just got nothing better to do with your time. It's an easy way out. I mean, there's a person in ITE actually, um, who uses video games to escape and tries to book themselves a lot with a lot of video games, and it helps them get away from doing schoolwork. I'm sure we all know who we're talking about. It's just
Well,
Absolutely,
okay.
I
absolutely
don't know.
know what
I
we're
don't know
talking
a lot
about.
about the
I'm
situation, but that's what
I, I'm
that's what
worried
I've heard.
that I thought about 3 people and I'm in
You
one.
thought about 3 people from our team? What the fuck, man?
Well, not from IT, not from Overwatch A.
No, okay.
But 2 of them are on Overwatch A.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
Two of them at least easily on Overwatch. It's just it's just really what you try and get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course there can be a lot of negative negative side effects, not benefits, of playing competitive games or just playing video games in general. It's just like if you play like a lot of FIFA or Madden or something, you can get super tilted and just, like, I don't know, break controllers and shit. Just throw controllers across the room. And it's okay. Well, now you just wasted $60. Congratulations. It's because you can't handle yourself. And it's I mean it's useful for bringing out some of the negative things that people have in their life. You can kind of address it. It's just not how a lot of people go about playing video games. They tend to do it to escape. They don't try and be like, oh, I'm gonna become a better person because I throw controllers.
Exactly.
That makes sense, but I don't know. There's also like the managing tilt and rage, and then, like, that comes about by a variety of different factors. Be it like using gaming as a way to vent, and that's how like people get toxic, mental booming because of expectations that they set on themselves. Like, oh, I'm definitely a much better player than I performed, stuff like that. But there's
My
still
teammates are holding me back.
It's
that's a
true,
big
though.
one.
I mean, I'm sure you can see that. I'm sure I don't know the parallels exactly because I've never been on a sports team before, but I'm sure that there are some people on sports that are like, yeah, my teammates just suck, and that's why I'm not performing well.
Uh,
I guarantee it.
I agree, but most of the time in games you don't have the energy to be bad. You're just either running your heart out or getting hit or getting checked or
Yeah.
you lost the ball but you're the first one down. Like, you got to be the first one back on defense. Like, the guy's running a fast break. What are you gonna do? Just tilt and not go for like play defense again? Like it's like a QB that throws a pick six, like, and he's the last guy that has to make the tackle. He's not gonna like taking his straps off and walking off the field. No, he's got to stop the guy,
Well,
or
hopefully.
at least try, or at least try, right? Like something, like I just feel like at least like my when I get frustrated in games, at least in normal sports, I'm not like I'm so tired that I'm just like, all right, next play. I'm like, yeah, I don't have energy to just be frustrated. When I get frustrated in a video game, it's like, wow, I've been clicking for 40 minutes and I just missed a click and I lost me the game. I'm not tired at all. I just want just
Can we cue the clip of Juan breaking the fucking out, like the fuck out of his keyboard? Also,
I
Juan,
think
don't
that's
get
my
Which is also
keyboard
the
using. You
same
better
clip
not
of
break that
him
keyboard.
humping his headset.
I think
Yeah.
something to consider too when it comes to like mentality towards other people in particular. Like traditional sports, there's always that face-to-face aspect, right? So if you're being an asshole in person, there's a lot of like social repercussions you have for doing such a thing. But when it comes to video games, a lot of people like are toxic because one, like they have some sort of other shit that they're dealing with and they just let it out while they're playing. But also like there's
Anonymous.
no yeah, they're anonymous, so like they can just be like no one's gonna care if like what do you call it? If I'm doing this, like my name's not attached to this, my face isn't attached to this.
Yeah,
Like
trolling.
I'll never I'll never see these people again. I can just do whatever I want, you know?
Yeah.
There's actually been a lot of psychological studies done about trolling and the anonymity behind why people do that kind of thing. Because it's like there just is no repercussions for being an asshole online. You know, especially if you're playing like CS:GO or Overwatch or something where you can just like buy a new account and just, hey, yep, new person, you know, and you just keep doing whatever the fuck you want. Because, I mean, in real life, of course, if you start shit with your teammates on a sports team, you're gonna get kicked off the team. Or like if you start harassing someone in school, I mean, you're gonna get kicked out of school. You know, it's just like, nah, it's not like that.
yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
they might
any
even
kind of video game.
fight back sometimes. Like you see, like some teammates, like when they have a feud, they get physical.
Yeah. People just don't know how to, I don't know, handle what's that word? I don't know what the word that is. Um,
What are you trying to
adversity.
say, Zaf?
Adversity.
Adversity.
Yeah, people don't know how to handle that, both IRL and online. And I think definitely in video games, it brings out the worst in people sometimes if you are the more on the toxic side of life, you know?
I mean, I just think that like looping back to the social consequence, like yeah, my teammate in real life, yeah, he's late to the drill, but he does it 2 or 3 times just to be like, oh come on, you're being a dumbass. Like instead of just being like write 7 paragraphs insulting this person's intelligence, his upbringing, the fact that his parents were
Oh, that's
alive,
my
like you
that's
know,
my favorite, dude. That is my
like
favorite from back in the league days.
you know, you just be like, oh, don't be dumb next time, or come on, man, to get your head of the game, you're gonna make us run or something. Well, it's not that. Like sometimes it's not that, but like
That's
not
like the
that.
Yo,
underlying
I
thing.
Yeah,
so
that's the end. Like that's the maximum. Like if anything, like if you're mad, like you have a helmet, gloves, you just wrestle, and then you're good, and then you're back to being friends. Like if
exactly,
anything.
but like when it comes to online, it's like your words are gonna absolutely ruin someone's day. Because I know that's happened to me a bunch of times where like it wasn't even like it's mainly in ladder. It's not even like in competition or anything, right? Like it's not during our Overwatch CC matches. It's not during back when I played League for a little bit with like my friends on like local tournaments or anything like that. It was more so like in solo queue. You hop in and you're having an off game, right? And all of a sudden your teammates start typing and they don't stop typing and you're like, please shut up, and you mute them and you still know that they're typing in the back of your mind and it eats away at you. And so like that's like the annoying aspect of it. Like genuinely causes like I don't know, I feel really bad at the end of the day, like when it comes to stuff like that, because I'm like, man, you must have had a shitty day to get to be really angry at someone online, or like you must be taking this way too seriously given the even though we're like not at that pro level. Like the biggest thing for me is when because this was back when I was like still in bronze, and like the number of people that tilt in bronze in league is phenomenal.
I
It's
mean, in
crazy.
in low elo in general, people just have like paper mache mentals where they just fucking one thing happens, one bad thing. If it's Overwatch, people will lose a fight. If in Valorant, one person will die at the start of the round, and all of a sudden the game's just over. Like
GG.
it's like yeah, it's like 5 seconds into the game, one bad thing happens that person now decides they want to throw, they want to leave, they just don't want to try anymore. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I think with Overwatch, especially in like a team environment, I know Zaf can can definitely attest to this, but like there's times in Overwatch where we're just like too tilted about a fight for no apparent reason.
Yeah, we just like, I don't know. A lot of that comes from, I think, of having an ego and not understanding like that there are other people that are just not as good as you, or Maybe you don't.
I'm not
maybe
pointing fingers, by the way. Just to be clear, for anybody, any VOD frogs watching this, we're not
No,
pointing fingers. It's just like in general, this happens.
People know who the. When I'm mentioning this, people know who they are, right? But everyone else is like, oh, that's not me. I don't got to worry about it. It's just people don't. I mean, like even if like you're the worst one on the team, like you can still have that kind of attitude where like, oh, I just needed more help.
Oh yeah.
Why are my teammates not helping me? If my teammates stayed alive,
Yeah,
I could help them more, or whatever.
Mhm.
It's just a lot of you and not me kind of mentality that people have, and that happens everywhere you go.
It's not like a we mentality,
I
and I
agree.
think that's like one of the most important aspects on the team, is using the word we more than anything. I don't know if you can speak on this,
I,
Zeph, but like, do you notice if like as soon as people start saying we in a team environment, like team synergy suddenly starts to go up a little bit? Because I feel like that's happened before, where people were like, "Yo, we need to take this fight in a different way," instead of like, I'm going in. What the fuck where the fuck is everybody else? It's like, yo, we weren't in the right position. So it's like kind of evenly splitting the blame. Because I know when I used to do soccer back in like middle school and stuff, we like anytime there was a mistake made, he'd be like, and like people were like, the coach would be like, okay, so whose fault was it? And then everyone would always say like all of our faults because we weren't with our teammate, like we weren't playing with our teammate, or like we weren't playing together, like after a match or something like that, or after practice, because like sure we'd do like drills, but then we'd have like the um six
yeah,
aside like end of practice kind of fun match that we'd have,
yeah,
and it's like
yeah.
taken like semi seriously. And he'd be like, okay, so I'm gonna sub people in and out. What mistake do you think he made? And then the person would be like, I just didn't do anything, and other people were like, nah, not your fault. The team
I,
wasn't there to help you, was
I,
that
I
type of thing.
also, I also think like, um, it, you should be able to know when it's actually your fault, right? Like, let's say, I mean, how do I say it? Like in lacrosse, when you're transitioning from defense to offense, there's this thing called the clear, right?
Hmm.
So the way I'm trying to relate it to football, it's more of like the kick, right? Like your kicking team has to be on point, right? So if anything goes wrong, they can deal with it. So if your two midfielders or your two people who are running or the one person who's running the ball doesn't know where to go or to see if there's someone else open, that's on him, right? So what ends up happening is people kind of have mismatched knowledge towards other people, and that's what ends up making it frustrating, right? Like it's like you're used to playing D3 basketball, D3 lacrosse, right? And then you go play like rec league. Like, yeah, you know you're better, but they're not doing anything that lets you show why you're better, or even if you're playing in the same game, right? And that's what frustrates people mainly the most, right? Because I don't know, it's just frustrating when you know you can do this and this is the correct way to do it, but no one wants to do it or is trying to do it or even might even know how to do it.
Hmm.
So it's sort of like I want to say disconnect, but sort of like the mismatched in like how the gameplay is, like how different how much variance gameplay can have is what sort of leads to frustration and like why people tend to have these negative lashes and negative feedback towards gaming.
I think in like let's say to Overwatch, like in a team atmosphere, I think a lot of like that same kind of tilt that you just mentioned comes from like let's say you play support, right? Let's say my role, I'm a flex support player, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's very obvious to me when I'm not getting help from two people that I'm expecting to peel for me at all times, the
Yeah.
offensive player and the main support player, right? So that's what I see the most, right? And I know if I'm dying and it's not my fault, I can definitely point fingers to, right? And then I mean, most of the time I'm just like, yeah, sorry, my bad, I was out of position. I won't put blame on anyone. But I mean, maybe after the game, I'm like, hey, I need a little bit more help. Like some of this
Yeah.
is my fault, some of it's your fault. We can meet in the middle. You know what I mean? And I think that's honestly where a lot of people get upset at. It's not being able to, I don't know, manage that, and then you just get mad at your
Yeah.
teammates. One specific teammate because you expect them to do X thing and you're never saying that thing, right? Or
Yeah.
you're just not getting the help that you need or that you think you need, but you don't understand that there are so many other factors that are going on right behind you. Like, hey, I'm not getting help. Well, both supports are dying on cooldown because you're not doing anything about it. well, I can't do anything about it if you're not, and then just gets in this
Yeah.
feedback loop about, them and you.
Well, you
and
should
then
position better. It's like, oh, you need
Yeah.
to do this better. It's like, well, why are you not calling out for it? It's like, called out for it. Well, too bad. Why are you not pocketing it? Like, this
Yeah.
is
And
just
then
a
you can just
whole
convert it all back to
cycle.
we statements. It's like, well, we were all out of position, or we need to recognize when this happens, we need to do this thing. And it's, I mean, it's just honestly how you frame it changes perspective a lot. And,
Yeah.
still,
And then sometimes it's you could be playing perfectly and the other team still outplays you, right? Like
yeah, people don't see that at all in overall.
Yeah,
In any
it's
game,
hard.
it's never, oh, they were just better than us. No. It's,
Or they did
why are
this
you
better
throwing
than us.
restrictions?
Right
always
now.
somebody on
Yeah.
your
It's
end made a
it's
mistake.
more like the criticism on us instead of thinking like, oh, they just built different, like
Maybe they just had
they're mechanically better, like they were hitting more shots than us. Instead of that, it's always like, oh, we misplayed everything. We're feeders. We're this. We're that. And I think we get into like a negative rut in ourselves.
And yeah, because it's hard to see, right?
Mhm.
I at least compared to traditional sports where like I had a couple plays in the game on set because my role is short stick defensive midfielder for lacrosse. So what the offense of the other team wants to do is just basically run past the people with the shorter sticks, right? So I could still play perfectly, and they're still gonna have an advantage because that's how they're writing the play up, right? Or that's how their offense is supposed to work. So I can still come out of the game and be like, oh, I felt like I should have had this, and then the coach would be like, nah, like you played it fine, like you're not gonna get there, right? Like unless you're just actually faster than you already are, or like stronger enough to like just body the kid that made the pass, you're not gonna win that, right? Like, and we'll live with it. I feel like in esports, all this like negative mindset that happens is stemming off like, oh, I forget that other people can pop off. That this is a game where I could lose, right? Or sure, my physical talents aren't really put on display, but he just did something better, and that's how they drew it up, right? Or
Mhm.
that's how it's supposed to work, right? And I'm gonna
Yeah.
make a league example, right? It's like, yeah, you could be 10-0-80 carry, but if an assassin gets on you, that's what's supposed to happen every time. Like that's how the game is supposed to work. Right? It's like if Doom gets on Ana for free, right? I think, right? Doom
That's
can
like
one shot
Doom
a
and
lot of characters, right?
yeah,
Doom gets on
buffs a lot of
Zenyatta.
characters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
like an Ana can just hard make a Doomfist swap if that Ana is competent enough, and that's really just like then it's a skill matchup, right? If you don't know how to handle a certain hero, then that's on you. You know what I mean? And
It's
then
just
that's kind of
recognizing counters and stuff.
yeah, and
But
I think
yeah,
that's
I think I get the
It's also a
analogy
skill.
there.
Yeah, he's kind of a skill check in a way. It's like if your team can't deal with the Doomfist, then he's just gonna take over the game.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
it's the same in Valorant, like smokes and flashes and
lineup
like
for some.
yeah, and lineups as well.
Yeah.
Like knowing the lineups for like Silva darts, right? Like on both teams, even if you don't play Silva, just knowing like where the lineups are or like where they approximately land will definitely help you in stopping an execution from happening or stopping information. Because like a big thing in Valorant is info, correct?
It's like the same thing with warding in LoL and Dota. It's like
Well,
knowing
you can't have
where the
5
enemy is
people
going
looking
to
for a
be.
Silva dart.
Yeah, but like people should generally know
Are
like,
you
oh, if
sure
there's a
about
Silva dart
that,
coming
Zach?
in.
Are you sure about
Well,
that?
You can look at ITA
You
Valorant.
want to
You want
ask Eric?
You want to ask
you
Valorant
wanna-
A because you can ask Memo about that.
I'm deleting all the bots. It's never
all
happened.
I'm saying is you should have one person. If the silver dart, there are like, maybe 3 different dart locations that are the most common. You need to have one person be ready to shoot that one specific dart, and boom, you no longer have to worry about the dart. And the other 4 people that are maybe, well, obviously it's not gonna be 4 people on a site, right? But maybe the other person. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how you hold sites. If you want to
Happens.
Valorant's a very deep game, right? I'm going
Yeah.
skipping over a lot of the the
Yeah,
nitty
yeah.
stuff, right? But
There's like a lot of
I
nuances to
agree.
it.
yeah, and that's why that's why a lot of people enjoy Valorant, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, what else? What else?
But
do we
there's
have to talk
also
about?
what I don't know. We kind of touched over and kind of glanced over the negative aspects, but let's talk about like away from the mental and go towards the physical. Because we
Injury.
have seen a lot of pro players, like especially in the league, experience like wrist injuries, like early onset, like wrist injuries and like bone. It's not disorder. It's just like I don't know what the word is called.
Back
medically.
spasms?
People kind of outside of esports kind of have this assumption that like because like esports pros they just bless you.
No,
They
I didn't mute.
they
I'm
just like
sorry.
they're sitting all day. It's like, oh well, you're not really exerting any physical activity because you're just sitting in a chair. Like, how could you possibly get injured? The reality is that you can get esports players do get injured. Like
Yeah, tendonitis.
they can suffer like overuse injuries and other like any other athlete, and also they have
Or
other physical health concerns like sedentary nature because of the sedentary nature of the sport.
or the bird ring classic of getting really bad at a game and just slamming his wrist and destroying it.
Yeah.
Dude, Sub Rosa does that. He slams his wrist on his fucking armchair.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm still shocked as like how his wrist hasn't fucking broken.
But also, I think a lot of people outside of esports don't understand either is a lot of esports pros are encouraged to like be physically active or like physically fit or work out and stuff because a healthy body does generally like also result in a healthy mind overall and just helps you like with your decision making reactions all of that really. And so all like a lot of these times like esports orgs will encourage even require these pros to like be physically active in some sort of way in order to just
What is it?
keep them on top of their game.
In
Yeah.
league, what was it? CLG, right? CLG had like a full facility, like in their big facility that they had. Was this CLG or 100 Thieves?
I think most teams are requiring pros
Yeah, but
to
like
do
they were
at
like
least
the
something.
first. They were like the first
Soul
team in
Dynasty
the
one.
LCS.
I think Astralis too.
Astralis, yes.
That said,
TSM's
Soul
doing it
Dynasty, right?
recently
Yeah.
because of Bjergsen's injuries. Like when Bjergsen got injured and like Doublelift got injured, they were like, "Yo, you need to take care of your health." And so like
Oh,
all of them
Rogue.
started working out.
Rogue has a good one.
Rogue, yeah. Rogue is
That's,
one of them.
what Steve Coy, whatever the CEO of Rogue is, like he puts a lot of money in his players, dietitians and all that shit for a team house and all that.
Yeah,
I mean, if it works
'cause-
for traditional sports, it has to work for esports, right? Like, there has to be
Yeah.
some random plant that just makes
I
you
think
crack.
the
I don't
biggest
know.
the biggest like
Juicers.
game you can see this for is like CS:GO. Like CS:GO players, like like fucking Pasha biceps, like they're like pretty
Yeah.
jacked. Like they're people who are fucking jacked that play esports. Like they look like you can embody them in game and out of game. Like if you try to post up to some kid, like if you try to post up to Freakazoid, he's gonna body the heck out of you. Like there's no shot.
And even then, like, it's just like how you work out, right? Because like
Mm-hmm.
lacrosse has a lot of rotational exercises over
Mhm.
like football, where it's just explosiveness in one motion, right? Like if you're playing O line or
Mhm.
just fast explosive if you're a wide receiver, right? So all these things affect how you improve, right? Like even if you work out, you can work out specific muscles to make sure in your your wrist, your tendons, like
Yeah, I know that
elbow, everything.
like a
And
lot
it,
of
and
esports players do a lot of like wrist exercises.
Mhm.
God, I
There's like
hope
a whole there's a whole channel that's like
the
of like a
classic.
doctor actually like showing us like how to stretch your wrist to increase longevity, that talks about
The
posture and
classic.
stuff like that because that's very important. Um, there's
mean,
like a lot of stuff like that.
if we just step aside from just like very obvious things, I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
we could talk about stress and the stress effects on your heart. We could talk about your arteries, like that's a very deep rabbit hole. Some of these players are just so hard on themselves. You see this in sports too, where like, I mean, you can get
Yeah, I
heart
feel that.
attacks. Now, obviously, heart attacks are very rare and whatnot, but it still does a number to your heart, your arteries and all that, to be trying to perform at the highest level and being so hard on yourself.
There's also the fact to consider that esports itself does not really have like a lot of regulation. So a lot of these pros have
Yeah.
really shitty like schedules.
Contracts. Just
Yeah.
contracts in
Yeah,
general.
contracts, schedules, like sometimes they're just overworked way too much, and that like it kind of goes into what Zaf is saying with the stress thing, where it's kind of compounding because one, the contracts might not be that good, but also like esports schedules, some like especially early on within an esport, they're pretty rigorous, right? Because you're just playing in tournaments over and over again.
I like to call it
And even
degenerate, but that's just
yeah,
me.
and then even after there's more regulation within a certain esport, a lot of these teams really overemphasize like practice. I know like particularly in Overwatch, there's like this whole thing of that of like teams like scrimming way too much, especially back in like season 1, where it's just they just
It was
They were
8
doing
hours,
12 hours a day.
yeah,
12 hours a day, and then they'd have
and
to stream as well.
exactly, and
absurd.
so it's not a healthy it's not a healthy lifestyle because I mean, other than the fact that you're playing a lot and then you also have other responsibilities to do, you are just what do you call it? You're just overworking yourself. Like it's just simply that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we can even bring up
I-
like nationality at that point, right? Because Koreans, they go hard in the paint. Like they don't mess around when it comes to esports at all. They are not afraid of spending 12 hours straight sitting in a goddamn chair to try and be the best player. They don't, you know. And you see a lot of Korean players like whenever they lose, like they're really emotional, right? Because they know they have a lot of fans and they have like an image to uphold, you know. And losing is just like not seen, you know, as a very good thing in, you know, in Korean culture.
Yeah, and also like going back to the stress thing, like when like yeah, like when you in Korean culture when you lose, they are generally very harsh on you. Like
Oh yeah.
Korean fans will just flame the shit out of you for the smallest thing, and that adds a lot of stress to these players.
I
And
think every culture has that.
well,
No.
Dude,
Yeah,
Korean
NA
but
fans
makes
in
memes
particular,
out of
it's
you.
like-
I'm gonna be honest.
Korean
NA
fans in
will just make a
particular-
meme out of you if you did one dumb thing and it sticks with you for the rest of your
Yeah.
career.
It's like Zachary's whenever he killed himself with his shock dart.
Oh yeah.
Even though Zachary's a good player. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
he's
even though
great
Zachary's like a really
Yeah.
good player, like
Yeah,
they still
yeah.
meme the heck
But
out of him.
he-
Like with Hiko as
yeah.
well, right? Like when
But when the
him
thing is
baiting his
that
teammates.
the different I mean this is kind of like something that we or have for a future topic, but the difference between when other regions do and when Korea does it is NA kind of memes on you, Korea kind of looks down on or
They,
well,
they
I say
criticize
Korea,
you. They
but Korean
they
culture
properly criticize you.
they will legitimately look down on you for a certain thing, you know.
I think they're more apt to handling that kind of hardcore criticism though than
Yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely are. That's
The
true.
NA folks.
because they take it more seriously. Like,
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot more weight to it.
I
Because
think
like esports in Korea are what like regular sports are to us in the US.
absolutely.
one
Like
of the things that
they
I
even
will
enforce
say,
law in Korea like
No.
for esports related stuff.
the
Yeah.
parallel I'd make is that like when it comes to Korea and esports, it feels like it's like they're doing a food review, right? Like it's a food critic. If there's a flavor that's even just off, a food critic will go in on it and fucking dissect the shit out of that dish and be like, "This is dog shit." Compared to when NA players try to do it, this is just Gordon Ramsay saying that's fucking dog shit, you know? Like it's just Gordon Ramsay just saying that the dish is bad. Like yes, it's bad, but like he doesn't tell why or anything. It's just like it's bad. And it's fucking
Yeah.
disgusting and whatnot, right? Like and it's big meme out of it. So there's obviously those. I think that's like the biggest parallel that I can think of right now between like the different types of criticism. But definitely we will be talking about like the East versus the West in a different episode. Hopefully in the future.
That's a great topic.
Exactly.
I just teased a little bit.
I also think that in traditional sports, there's only a certain amount of time you can actually be like physically productive before you're just like your body can't do anymore, right?
Yeah, I think that's the physical limitations compared to
Yes,
esports, where I
but-
think it's
Yeah.
both physical and mental. So like a lot of esports players that I've noticed are really just like when it comes to a video game, they rarely tilt. And I mean like hard tilt, like they're breaking their headset, they're breaking their monitor or something like that. Like
I mean,
you know, cue up the
yeah.
Summit 1G clip where he breaks his fucking monitor midstream, right? Like if you look at an esports pro, he just goes like, "Shit, that was unlucky. I guess I'm gonna end stream here." You know, like they have like they have their boundaries. Or like when
I
Scream
wasn't
plays and he's
really-
playing like hot ass and he's just like, you know what, this is the last game of the day. You know,
I
stuff
guess.
like that.
I mean, I wasn't gonna do it like that. That wasn't really what my point was gonna be. But like in traditional sports, practices can only go for 2.5 hours. So so they know how to make practices useful for you to improve.
Oh, you were doing it that way. Okay.
Yes, that like and because scrims, I feel like 90% of the time just like, all right, just play and you guys figure it out. Right? You get
Just
better.
play forehead. You know.
Yeah, no, that's basically what scrims are. Like
that
that's
pisses
how,
me off the
that's-
most is the
that's
use of
how-
forehead.
No, that's how early esports and basically right now it's in the middle of trying to figure it out. But that's basically what's happening. They're like, oh, we got 3 script blocks that are just like 2 blocks, right? Which doesn't seem a lot, but that's 6 games at least that you're playing, right? And it's
Depending
just,
on the game,
oh,
that's
play.
hours.
Yeah,
I just remember something where like if you look at League of Legends season 1 and like the players in season 1, like if you look at Odd One, right? He looks like a bag of sticks. He looks like frail as shit, right? But he can play the game for like 12 plus hours a day. And then you look now and like the esports like the pros now, right? Like they're taking fitness into account and whatnot. Like back in the day in season 1, like especially
that's
for like a game that's like in its, I wouldn't say infancy, but like
infancy. It wasn't his
when it was
infancy.
like growing as an esport as well. Infancy in terms of its esport, yeah.
Yeah, because
Like
they didn't know how to get better. They're just like, the more we play, the better we'll get.
It
But
still is
like,
that way. Like we're talking
yeah,
about this like it's in an infancy, but this is
that's what's happening, right? I feel like it's still
going
happening.
on that teams are like, oh, coaching's useful. Like
it's
from
it's an
think about-
epidemic that's plaguing the gaming culture right now.
yeah, it's just I mean, so from my understanding, I could be wrong. I don't play CS:GO. I don't play a lot of Valorant, but Overwatch is kind of my thing, right?
Yeah.
But in CS:GO, a lot of the organizations are player led. Like there's not really a coach. It's just usually like there's the shot caller on the team does designs plays, does the bot reviews about the enemy team. Like he makes up a strategy, right? And then that's the guy, right? Like on in Valorant and on Sentinels, that's Shazam. That's just what he does, right? And he's very good at his job. And then
Yeah,
you look
in CS:GO, I believe that there's coaches now, but back in the day, no, definitely not. Like people would
It
literally
depends
just
on
play
it
the game.
depends on what tier you're in. Like tier
Oh yeah,
1,
that too.
there's no coaches. Tier
With
2,
the
you
level of
have a
coaching
coach in the game with you.
they coach differently as well. So
Yeah.
like if we look at Overwatch, coaching, if you look at Krusty, for example, right? How he coaches it's from what Super has said, I believe, is he's flaming you but with a purpose.
It was Sinatra.
Oh yeah,
That's
whoever said
It
that.
was Sinatra said it to Space when he was talking about it in Space. There was this clip on Space where someone commented like, "Oh, Krusty's just a toxic black coach. Like, what the fuck?"
Oh yeah, and coaching is totally
Space
toxic,
is just like, "Are you stupid or are you stupid? Like, you don't even know how coaching works because you've never been coached a day in your life, you know?"
Yeah, and that's only like we're talking about like what 3 teams in the Overwatch League, like the Shock or like that, Fusion's like that, and what Shanghai, like all of. And I guess Seoul Dynasty to some extent, but like all of the other teams, like we look at
Boston Uprising.
Yeah, we look at the Boston Uprising, and they're primarily like player led. Their coaching staff isn't that great, and that's pretty evident, And you can look at, for example, like the Shanghai Dragons season 1, who went 0-40, right? The only esports team to have ever done that. Only sports team to have ever actually done that.
Yes, yes, that is
Kind of
true.
hype. It's kind of hype.
Yeah,
Kind of hype, dude. You have
so-
to
I
be there.
relate with them.
Yeah, a lot of those players, a lot of other players in the league. We're talking about how Shanghai Dragons. They were the team that were scrimming the most. They were often the ones leaving last out of the Blizzard Arena because that's where everyone played in Anaheim. And I can't imagine the fucking physical toll that must have had on them, or mental toll about just being there the most and still losing every single game. That's just. Like I can't even relate to that,
Yeah, it's kind of like what is it? In basketball, like when the coach says like you need to land 50 free throws before you leave, and like go take a shower and leave for the day, and like
Yeah.
you do the 50 or the 100 or whatever, right? Like you do the amount and like you do like whatever the cooldown routine is that he wants you to do, and then you stay extra. Like a whole team stays extra, even longer, and like the coach is gone, and like the players are still there. They're still like working. They're like doing drills and whatnot. They're like practicing team play and whatnot, and they go into like match day, and they fucking get swept by a team that's practiced like slightly less than them. Like it starts to like take a mental toll on you because you're just like, I put in so much hard work, but I'm not reaping any results.
How do you work, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, now the cross game versus Benedictine on Saturday, our defense is really good when it's set, like versus set teams that like play out the shot clock, and lacrosse shot clock's like 80 seconds, right? We're really good when we play 6-on-6 set, but Benedictine likes running the ball. They like playing off subs, so we're just struggling to play transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does our coach do? Next 5 practices, we're learning how to play transition. We're learning how to pick people off. We're learning how to guard 1 through 6, right? Like depending on the person, what happens when short sticks on an attackman behind the crease, right? Like, what do you do?
I
Do
think
you just
that's the
leave one
one
and
thing
you
you
know,
kind of
like
can do with traditional sports that you can't quite do with esports, right?
yeah. I mean, I was gonna lead it towards like you can probably relate that to like let's say Valorant teams that are hyper aggressive that play off contact. What do you do when you have teams that just run into sites and play contact off you?
Sentinels phase.
Well, you play you play retake.
Hell.
You play retake or
Wardell.
Not Sentinels, but
you know
Less
like
Sentinels, yeah, fair.
like what happens when you play versus a team that just relies on their late game team fighting, right? And this is really solid. Like, what do? You play super aggressive in the early game. You make sure you punish those late game carries. Like, that's how TSM got shut down most of the time when they couldn't pick up steam in mid game. Like, all these things that I feel like teams don't know how to implement. They're like, it's not like they don't see it. It's just like they don't know how to practice it. So they just like, oh, we're gonna play. Oh, our draft has to be better. So they'll get good drafts, but then they don't know why it's not working or why it is working, right? Like, and that
Mhm.
leads to frustration, right? And that I won't say wouldn't happen in traditional sports because like sometimes you just play teams that are play a whole different style. You haven't really seen that, and you just have to improvise, and that's when individual skill comes out. But if the team play isn't there, right, you gotta have someone tell you, hey, you gotta work hard at this to get it up to speed, instead of like, oh, just practice 4 hours a day instead of 2 hours a day and run the same amount, right?
Yeah. Um.
That if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's just that for esports, it's really difficult to do like set plays, even in Valorant, right? Like it's hard to practice that type of
Hard to
thing.
set
practice, but
plays.
I don't think it's hard to
Like not
practice.
set plays. I mean like against a specific type
It
of
depends. It
players, like
depends.
slash team, right?
It
Like you
depends
have to
on
like
this.
actively look out for it.
It depends
Especially in
on the.
like lower tiers. Like
Yeah. I was gonna say it depends on the tier because in high tier I wouldn't say so, but in low tier that's definitely true.
in high tier,
Because
you usually just practice with like the teams in your tournament or something like that. Like or like
um,
other tier one teams. Maybe not directly in the tournament, but like let's say like
well,
the group A, group B, right? Like you usually scrim against like group A people will scrim against group B people and stuff like that. In the group stages.
I guess
well,
yeah. For league, yeah.
it
For
depends
league,
on the
that's what they do.
it depends on the esport because in Overwatch it doesn't in Overwatch and League like it probably doesn't matter as much because set plays in general just aren't as important. But with games
No.
like CS or Valorant, when especially when you know who your matchup is beforehand, there will be a lot of counter stratting if you have time to prepare. But on like an actual tournament day, they'll probably
But
prepare for like the opponent they think most, or that
Mm.
they
yeah,
are afraid of
What
most.
that's the person you're facing first.
Yeah.
and I think the main difference from traditional sports is that they've already figured it out because you don't really play scrimmages that much. You have two
Yeah.
like preseason games or preseason scrimmages, and then you're playing
Mm-hmm.
people in your conference or you're playing out of conference games, right? So for 6 to 8 weeks, you're just playing yourself, right?
Yeah.
How does that lead to improvement, right? Like why are we not improving? Like why can't esports improve if they're playing versus other people? They're
But
picking up other people's
I think it's
playstyles, right?
because I think it's because in esports, a lot of it has to do with the fact that the game is very isolated in like the type of way that you can play it, right?
Yeah.
So for sports, like if you want to do drills, you can design one and just do it using, you pick up a basketball and you do a certain drill, right? But for esports, it's a lot harder because the game is like stuck within a certain format and
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that you're doing is best practice within like the format that you're playing in, you know? Like
Yeah.
there's some mechanical stuff that you can improve on,
I'm just
but
saying, like, going,
overall,
I don't know.
yeah.
I just don't know how to phrase it, maybe, but more of like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we're practicing fakes, so all you do in the scrim is run fakes. I don't know, or like, we're just practicing contact, so you have less smokes, less stuff, and you're just working on your entry routes, right, or
Yeah.
clearing angles, right. I
Yeah.
guess I guess it's way different, but I don't know. I definitely do see how this causes a lot of players mental anguish, at least at the top level, because there is no regulation on how much you have to play. Like NCAA says, 2.5 hours of practice is the maximum. if you're D1, you're forced to weightlift or whatever strength and conditioning program your university is on. After that, D3 is like, yeah, you just have to show up and play. It's like interest based, you kind of can, but we can't force you. Right?
Exactly.
So, sort of like, I don't know. I could definitely see why it isn't improving at the rate we want it to.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking off the whole regulations and things. There's obviously ways in which people can prolong the longevity of their gaming career. So it just like even if you're like a casual player, a hardcore player, a competitive player, whatsoever, right? Like we've talked about this very briefly already about like how useful it is to do certain exercises and stuff, and like maintaining like a healthy diet is part of it, like having a good routine. And I know Zaf has gone over this multiple times, and this, like he said this in our fundamentals talk. We were talking about like the fundamentals of playing Overwatch, where he's like, have a routine. And like this doesn't even like limit, so like this doesn't even like limit yourself to just like match day, but like practice day, the day after practice, the day you don't have practice at all, like even in real life, like just having a routine of like, okay, I'm gonna have a certain amount of time where I'm dedicating to playing the game, like let's say 2 hours, right, on a day, because we're not like at the top level. So it's like, okay, 2 hours I'm playing the game, and then I'm doing like an hour warm up, let's say, or like a 30-minute warm up before that, playing the game for 2 hours, and I do like a cool down for like 30 minutes and like stretches and whatnot to make sure that like my wrists don't like fuck up the next day if I practice the next day. And then there's also like your eating routines. Like for me, I've, because of like quarantine and whatnot, I've had like a really shitty eating pattern where like I'd be like, some days I'd have 3 meals a day, some days I'd have five, and then some days I'd literally just have 1 meal a day. And it's like it ranges between like 1 to 5 meals a day depending on the day of the week, and the week and month and the year and stuff like that, and like the seasonal changes and whatnot. Like it just, there's a lot of factors, but like I think having a routine of being like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed at this time, have this much amount of sleep, wake up at a certain time. I think those things definitely help like your physical, because it gives your body enough rest, and then it also helps your mental because it allows your body to be like, okay, this is a time where we're relaxing, we're not thinking about the game. You can just float off to dreamland or wherever you want to float off to in your mind. um and it just gives your brain like some rest and some downtime compared to if you're playing like, I'm playing for 14 hours a day, I'm doing homework for like 3 or 4 hours, I'm doing studying for another hour, and I'm going to bed for like 4 hours, and I wake up and I repeat with like no downtime. It's just like that will immediately burn you out. And I think that's like one of the biggest things. And I think in terms of regulations, that definitely needs to happen. Where like I think teams need, especially at like the top tier, is that like I think the tournament organizers need to be like, okay, we recognize that there's a lot of burnout. Like Overwatch is like the biggest was it the biggest sufferer from this, or culprit is the biggest culprit.
There's a lot of turnover in Overwatch.
Yeah, there's like every season you see like a lot of players just like being like, yo, I am way too burnt out to play the game or something like that, like
I think
compared
also,
like season 1, season
yeah,
2, and then season 2 to season 3, like you can
some of that
see
also
like
stems.
you can see the
Some of that
change.
also stems from the fact that Overwatch League like recruiters have this weird mentality that younger players are like always better, so then they just go for the younger players as much as possible, and then it cycles out like, what do you call it, the more like veteran players, like
Yeah,
they just
Dustin
have
Bowerman was talking about it when he was like, yeah, so he did a bunch of, so after last season when it was like in the postseason, and like teams were conducting tryouts and whatnot, and like Dustin Bowerman, whose in-game name is Dogman, and he played for the Atlanta Reign and Overwatch. He did a bunch of tryouts for other teams as well, and he was like talking to people, and they basically said like, hey, you're what, like you're getting a little too old. And I'm gonna be honest, I think he's not even like that much older than us or even younger than us.
25, I believe.
Yeah, so he's like pretty fucking young compared to like a lot of other people. But they're like, yeah, we're looking at younger talent because they can cultivate, like you can cultivate them more compared to like veterans, right? Like who have like it's harder for them because there's a lot more maintenance that you have to do. Like they're not going to be able to play as much in a single sitting and stuff like that. But like
A really good analogy for exactly what you're trying to describe is it's kind of like a block of clay, right? With the older you get, the more you kind of mold how you want to play your gameplay, mechanics and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of starts solidifying the older you get, right? At least this is the thought anyway. But you look
Yeah,
at
I agree.
like they're just like a 2x2 block of clay. You can make whatever the fuck you want out of them, right? And a lot of these coaches would prefer having that over someone who, like, we could look at, I don't know, Dogman, for example, right? Or he has a pretty defined play style. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's consistent, and that's that. He's not a star player. He's not going to make a lot of plays, but he's there and he's good at his job, right? But then you look at someone who isn't the Overwatch League yet, like Ultraviolet, right? My boy Ultraviolet, who I think is 16 or 17 now, where you can make him. He has a mechanical skill to do whatever you want him to do. Like you could make him into a star player, or you can make him into a consistent, role player. You can make him a shot caller. You can do whatever you want with him because he's young, he's fresh, and he's just unmolded, not in the oven yet.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's a great analogy.
there's definitely a lot of truth to that. It's just that in Overwatch, for some reason, that sort of mentality exists a lot more than other esports, because I think other esports in general just have a lot more veteran
It
presences.
doesn't exist in CS:GO.
It
Like, that's
doesn't, not at
Yeah.
all. Like they
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
There's
Which-
like we'll
which is
take
a
whoever
problem.
whoever
A
comes. We'll
little bit of a
take.
problem. Which is a little bit of a problem for CS:GO. Yeah.
Because you look at Valorant, right? You have a lot of old guard CS:GO pros. Steel, who's like 30 fucking years old. Nitro, who's like 29, has a kid.
Yeah,
Like these are like some old
Sorry.
CS:GO players. Like these are
Hiko.
respectful.
Hiko's
Yeah.
one of them. Like actual boomers,
Also, in Valorant, the kind of the opposite exists as a result of CS2. Like it's kind of both sides in Valorant, because in CS:GO, because they value veterans a lot of the new people didn't really get a chance to get to like some tier 1 orgs, and a lot of the younger players who were stuck in grinding tier 2 CS:GO just left for Valorant.
A lot of
Sabrosa,
gatekeeping in
Wardell,
CS.
or a couple of
I
them.
mean, at the same time, like, it's like these old guard veterans. It's like Tom Brady. Like, yeah, he's a boomer. He's not insane, but he can lead a team, right? Like, why would you replace him with this young gun Patrick Mahomes person? Like, he can just throw sidearmed 80
Oh
yards. Like,
my
he can
God.
sidearm throw on the run, falling down like 60 yards. When
Yeah,
you have this one person who's just like tried and
consistent.
tested, and
He's
Comparing-
consistent and he can clutch up. He has like the
I mean,
X
I don't know
factor,
if that
right?
I don't know if that's the best comparison. I just
maybe not to like people like Hiko and stuff. Like we're talking about like I don't know the Astralis team. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't know. I don't follow CS:GO. Maybe the best CS:GO team, right? The
Like
best player.
Device. If you
Easily
try to like equate Device to Tom Brady, I think that would make sense because he's a clutch player. He's a very good leader. Like he's a very very good leader. He knows the strat book on the back of his hand. He knows exactly how to call mid game, mid fight,
Sure,
mid
his
round.
reaction time is 200,
Exactly.
like
And then
milliseconds,
like
but
he's still older compared to these like other CS:GO players, and like like I think that's exactly what it is. And then you compare like Stewie, for example, right? Like he's newer. He's not like an old guard, I'd say.
yeah,
He's like kind of newer to the scene and whatnot. And then he goes into Liquid. He's like doing a bunch of stuff. Like you could also look at Fallen and stuff like that from CS:GO, but like you don't see those people in like Overwatch. I think the most veteran I can think of is Krusty. Your coach, if your coach is like the equivalent to Tom Brady, that just means something.
Well, a lot of this transitioning that we're talking about happened going into season 3 and now into season 4,
Mhm.
right? Because in season 1 we had big names like Jae Hung,
Mhm.
all of Lunatic High, right? We had big names from Team Rogue. Well, some of them, not all of them. Soon, Unco, AKM,
Yeah.
and other players from like Valiant and all that. And then going into season 2, it's just like however many brand new teams, 4 or 5, I don't remember. And just a bunch of new energy was shot into the league. With a bunch of young talent, and then teams like, oh shit, wow, Contenders is really good. Let's yoink these players from Korea, plop them in our team. Bada bing, we're good, right? And
Like
then that's
the
kind
the
of how
Vancouver Titans in season 2
yeah.
of
I mean,
Overwatch
exactly.
League.
I mean, you just pick up a team, you put them down, and if the team's good enough, they get results. Runaway, perfect example, right? And then like when we go into season 3, it's just completely different. You know, we just see like a lot of these older players just leave. I mean, after Vancouver, imploded, Jaehung's out of the league, right? You have
Mhm.
all of the, I mean,
Surefour,
Surefour's out of the league this year.
Agilities is out of the league this year.
Agilities. There's a lot of other people that obviously I don't remember most of them because they've been out of the league for a while.
Mhm.
But,
Like
you don't see that
Pine was one of them from season 1 to 2, where he just got kicked
Yeah.
out of the league, and he's like one of the best gamers out there. It even happens to streamers too. Where like they're just like I can't be bothered with this game anymore, and that's fine. And like a lot of CS:GO people also moved away from streaming CS:GO. Like CS:GO content creators were like, "Yo, Valorant's kind of hype," and so they moved there. But we digress a lot, and I
I'm just
do.
riding with the flow, man.
I know you're just riding the wave. I know, but I want to talk about like how one could kind of experience healthy gaming, because this is one of the newer topics that's coming out. There's a whole like there's a whole like there's a what was it, Dr. K on
Dr.
Twitch,
K.
healthygamer.gg. He does a whole thing about like gaming in moderation, healthy gaming, like mainly for the mental health, and like how you can not let like your addiction to gaming kind of get out of control, managing various life situations, and still having like gaming as a way to relax, and at the end of the day, kind of have that downtime to kind of enjoy video games, and like maybe even like if you feel like you have no purpose in life or something like that, there's obviously stuff like that. Um, there's a bunch of other like resources out there that people can look towards. Just
Sports psychology is a big field now. That's a growing demand for esports.
But I also feel like the game, like people love the game, right? People love playing X game, but then they compete or start competing and know that they want to be better, but the game is super different than what they're used to, than what's fun for them, right? If that makes sense. Like,
And I'm a boomer. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
no. No,
yeah,
I'm
but
just
that's
saying,
kind
like, if you
of.
play
I just want to just go
casuals,
over
no,
the
no,
resources, because I don't want to dive into another topic, because we've been going on it for a
no. This
bit.
is what I want to say on healthy gaming and like relating it to competitive. Like, if you play casual League of Legends like Nords, like you're always gonna have fun because no one cares what you're doing. You're there to play League of Legends, right?
Yeah.
Once you start playing competitive fives, once you start playing ranked, everyone's like, "Oh, you're not playing the best character, but you might not like that best character. You might not be good at that best character." But
Hmm.
but like then League of Legends becomes not fun because you're not playing the League of Legends you want to play, right? In
Exactly.
traditional sports, regardless of what tier of competition you're doing, you're still playing the game,
Hmm.
if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you guys feel that. Like, I mean, maybe in Overwatch it's like, oh, playing quick play to like actual scrims where like, yeah, every little movement makes sense, like pushing up, taking space, all that good stuff. Whereas like someone who just used to playing casual or quick play is like, oh, I'll just walk up, shoot, my abilities, be done, and that's how I have fun, right? For a
Hmm.
competitive player, that's not it. Like they're there to compete, right? And since the game changes from what they've used to playing, I think that's where the big disconnect of not having fun when you're competing happens in esports, right?
Yeah.
Versus like traditional sports where like fundamentally, yeah, the game gets faster, the game gets stronger, but you still play the same thing you're playing since you're like in Pee-wee football, right? Like, you know,
Hmm.
maybe that's not the best analogy because obviously things change, but like, yeah, you're always gonna pass the same way. Your split dodge is always gonna be the same
Like
way.
middle school like football, and then you go into like high school football, and then college football, right? Like, college football, like
Yeah,
Div 1, like D1 schools, like if you get recruited into those, like that's a different environment, but it's still the same sport.
yeah, you're
Fundamentally, it's
fundamentally,
still, I have a football. Like as a
yeah,
quarterback,
like
I know my
I'll
job.
play right. Yeah, I'll play right. Yeah, exactly. I'll play like left guard, right guard. But I feel like in esports, that for some players, like yeah, they're like, oh, I'm good.
I
And
think
it's like
that's like a
competing, and
mental
it's
barrier
not
that
fun.
people have to go over, and that's why when it comes to gaming and moderation, especially in esports, I think it's more so important to have like someone to talk to, right? Like a lot of teams are hiring sports psychologists. A lot of teams are definitely doing a lot more for just like ensuring that their players' mental health and physical health is at its peak, so that the players can perform at their peak. And I think that's
Yeah,
where
well,
like all these resources come in. That's why
I don't
I kind of
even.
want
I
to
don't
kind of
even.
want to end it there
Yeah,
in
you can
terms of
end
like
it.
just plug in a bunch of resources for people who are like not necessarily um, going into a bunch of like super serious gaming, like super serious competitive, like tier 3, tier 2, whatever sport they're in, whatever game that they're playing. Obviously there's different outlets for that, like Healthy Gamer is one of them that I personally vouch for, that I think is really good to look at. That Dr. K personally trains a bunch of people. He's a graduate from Stanford. It's one of the newer fields is trying to use research to kind of find the best balance so that a person can still have fun this without actually taking away from life and whatnot. And so that's why I'm kind of saying like gaming in moderation isn't about your work. It's kind of like a work life balance, but there's also like game life balance, where you do have your social interaction, you do have people you're talking to outside of the game, and not just like your whole world revolves in the game, um, per se. And I think with that, I don't know if anybody has any like ending comments or plugs to kind of put in. We are looking for sponsors still. Please do reach out to us. We'd appreciate it. Um, and any other final comments, or am I?
Having a 6'5", 250 pounds, can bench 500.
Yeah, dude.
Someone pick this man up.
Exactly. Pick me up, teams. Yeah, Zach. Do you have any other like plugs that you have? Or
I
resources,
don't think I
anything
want to
like
plug
that?
it. Obviously, mental health. That's kind of my whole
Mhm.
shtick. I mean, I care a lot about mental health in the United States, and of course, it's way different in the East or even other parts of the West. So, um, if you know someone that needs help, offer it. If you need help, there's help resources out there. I mean, you can feel free to DM probably any of us in here, and they will redirect you to me, because that's kind of like my whole thing. Be more than happy to give you resources that are required or necessary. So that's all I gotta say.
All right, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this very in depth and certainly pretty good episode in my books, about physical and mental health in esports and in gaming in general. Um, stay healthy and stay safe out there, and we'll catch you in the next episode in a couple of weeks. Peace out.
Bye bye.